So I hope you can see this material.
Yes, sir.
This is your experiment on strain measurement. We are going to discuss that now. Before I move on to the actual experiment, just a brief recollection of resistive strain gauges and some of their measurement circuits or signal conditioning circuits. So resistive strain gauge, you know, it consists of a resistive element. So this resistive element can be made of metal alloys, or they can also be of semiconductors, doped silicon or germanium. So these resistive elements, they are affixed to backing materials of some appropriate insulating material. This backing material is this backing is used for the mounting of the resistance elements. The backing material carrying the resistive element, that constitutes the complete strain gauge arrangement. So with the help of appropriate cements, can be different types of adhesives. So with different types of adhesives are available, this backing material carrying the resistive element, it's mounted or pasted onto the object whose strain is to be monitored. Now, the length of the strain gauge is usually aligned in the principal direction of strain, direction of principal strain. All right. So when that object, mechanical object, it's subjected to mechanical strain, if the bonding between the backing material and this object is very firm, the same strain is transmitted to the gauge. So the physical dimensions of the gauge changes. The physical dimension or physical dimensions rather of the gauge change with the application of the mechanical strain. So what will happen? For the figure where I have shown this resistive element, if there is a tensile strain on the object, see the direction of the principal strain is in the direction along the length of the wire. So its resistance will increase. The length of the wire increases due to this tension and the cross section decreases. Therefore, the resistance of this resistive element, it will increase. Now, what is done is that this resistive element, it's connected to an appropriate measuring circuit, which is also known as signal conditioning circuit. So either say if it is a bridge circuit, either by null method or preferably by direct readout method, the change in resistance is obtained and consequently the strain is measured. Now, if R is rho L by A, if you just differentiate both sides, you will get the expression minus this twice dd by d. All right. So if you just, this gauge factor is dr by r divided by epsilon. dr by r, it will be equal to d rho by rho plus dl by l minus dA by A. Minus dA by A, it will be equal to minus twice dd by capital D. What is this D? It is the diameter of the wire. dl by L is the mechanical strain. So dividing both sides by epsilon, the mechanical strain, you get this expression. dr by r by epsilon, it is called the gauge factor. It's a property of the material. All right, the strain gauge. So in this expression, you may see that apparently the change in resistance occurs due to the change in the physical dimensions. That means the geometric term is there twice mu, where mu is the Poisson's ratio. All right, Poisson's ratio. What is that one? Poisson's ratio. It is this dd by d minus dd by d divided by epsilon. That is the Poisson's ratio. So twice mu term is coming in here. There is another term which is 1 by epsilon times d rho by rho. This is called the piezoresistive term. And dr by r by epsilon, that is called the gauge factor. Gauge factor is actually a measure of the sensitivity of the gauge. Higher is the value of the gauge factor, more sensitive the gauge will be. In practice, obviously, you cannot have infinitesimally small change in resistance. There will be some small but finite change. So gauge factor in practice, it will be delta r by epsilon. Now, apparently, there is no reason why the resistivity of the material will also change due to mechanical strain. But in practice, the resistivity of the material also changes due to mechanical strain. This is of importance in the case of semiconductor materials. All right, when you have semiconductor gauges, there, just 1 minute, is happening. Just 1 minute. So I hope you can see it. But in case of semiconductor gauges particularly, just have a look. There is a geometric term, there is a piezoresistive term. In case of semiconductor gauges, this change in resistivity as a result of mechanical strain takes place and it dominates, almost swamps the geometric term. The change in resistivity takes place, with increase in mechanical strain, the mobility of the charge carrier that changes. All right. So while in case of metal alloy gauges, the geometric term dominates, in case of semiconductor gauges, the piezoresistive term. This phenomenon is called piezoresistive effect. Don't confuse it with piezoelectric effect. Piezoelectric effect is something else. The application of mechanical strain results in development of an electric polarization, consequently electric voltage. But here, with application of mechanical strain, the resistivity changes. So that is dominant in case of semiconductor gauges. Semiconductor gauges can be of P-type and N-type. All right, P-type and N-type. So rho can either increase or decrease with the mechanical strain in semiconductor gauges. Metal alloy gauges, the gauge factor lies in the range 2 to 6. Most often it is around 2. All right. In case of semiconductor gauges, doped silicon and germanium, because the piezoresistive effect dominates, that change in resistance, change in resistivity, per unit mechanical strain, that is an enormously large value, large magnitude. Therefore, in case of semiconductor gauges, the gauge factor ranges from minus 140 to plus 175. Resistance of P-type gauges increases with applied mechanical strain, tensile strain, while that of N-type gauges, it decreases with applied tensile strain. So in the first case, the gauge factor is positive. In the second case, the gauge factor is negative.
স্যার আপনার স্ক্রিনটা বারবার অন অফ এরকম হচ্ছে।
হচ্ছে?
হ্যাঁ।
আচ্ছা, দাঁড়াও। এবার কি আর হচ্ছে?
না স্যার।
আচ্ছা, ঠিক আছে। ফুল স্ক্রিনে কিছু একটা প্রবলেম হচ্ছিল তার মানে। Now, therefore, semiconductor gauges are highly sensitive. Highly sensitive. Their merits are they are free from hysteresis and creep effects. Creep effect means with change in there is a change in the bonding between the backing material and the object, thereby changing the characteristic. That is called creep. Chemical inertness is another advantage of semiconductor gauges, good fatigue life and low transverse sensitivity. Now, if you have a look at this resistive strain gauge arrangement, I have shown that the length of this gauge, it's aligned in the direction of principal strain. Now, if you apply as mechanical strain in a direction perpendicular to the length of the gauge, then what is desired is that under that condition, the gauge resistance should not change. It will change, but that should be extremely small so that it can be neglected for practical purposes. So that sensitivity to change in mechanical strain in the direction perpendicular to the gauge axis, that is called transverse sensitivity. So transverse sensitivity, ideally it should be 0. So in case of semiconductor strain gauges, they can be designed for low transverse sensitivity. In metal alloy gauges also, they are designed for low sensitivity, but for semiconductor gauges, it's much smaller. Demerit, there are a lot of demerits. One is that there are mounting difficulties which can be taken care of, although there is high temperature sensitivity of the resistance and non-linearity of the characteristic. In case of metal alloy gauges, the gauge factor, what I have defined as the gauge factor, that is a constant. That is a constant. But here, delta R by R, the relation between delta R by R and mechanical strain epsilon, that is not linear. Delta R by R is not proportional to epsilon. Highly nonlinear characteristic. So gauge factor doesn't have a constant value. It has different values for different epsilon. All right, that is the problem with semiconductor gauges, but its main importance is it has a very high sensitivity, very high. Now with this background, I will just move on to the bridge circuits. I don't know to what extent these bridge circuits, in what details they have been covered, but I'll just state that briefly. The simplest possible arrangement is that there is a single strain gauge. I have taken here the example of a cantilever. It's supported at one end and a force is applied at the other end. And say it is for the mechanical strain that develops, you have placed a strain gauge SG having a resistance RG on the top surface, upper surface. When this force is applied, what will happen? This cantilever will flex as shown. So if this strain gauge is aligned, if its length is aligned in the direction of principal strain, its gauge resistance will increase. Now, I have placed this gauge in one arm of a Wheatstone bridge, as you can see here from the right side diagram. Remember that the gauge is at site and your remaining bridge configuration and the supply, and as well as the voltmeter. If you use null method, you'll be using here some galvanometer. Pearsonville galvanometer. If you use direct readout method, here you will have some voltmeter, or it can be taken to some data acquisition system. Normally, direct readout method is used nowadays. Therefore, from the strain gauge, a 3-core cable has to be brought in. Why is this 3-core cable required? Just try to think that if instead of 3-core cable, we had used 2-core cable, then that would have resulted in an insertion of the lead resistances into these bridge arms. Now also they are getting inserted, but the error is less. The insertion of the lead resistances into the bridge arms would have affected the performance seriously. Therefore, we make the use of this, what is known as Siemens 3-lead arrangement. So one of the core goes to this voltmeter because it lies in this series with the voltmeter. Ultimately, it doesn't have any effect on the bridge performance. Another lead is in series with this resistance R1. Third one is in series with RG. So that constitutes this arm, the fourth arm. So remember that RG, I am considering that it consists of a resistance capital R plus change in resistance delta R due to mechanical strain. So what is done is that nominal value R, this is called the nominal value of the strain gauge, the resistance under no strain condition. So other bridge arms, their values are selected as R. And one of the arms, it is varied to secure bridge balance when there is no mechanical strain. So ideally, R1 should be equal to capital R when you balance the bridge under no strain condition, no strain, absence of mechanical strain. Now when you apply a mechanical strain, what will happen? The bridge balance will be disturbed. So there will be an output voltage. Why will the bridge balance be disturbed? Now the resistance of this strain gauge will become, instead of R, it will become R plus delta R, or depending on the arrangement, it may be R minus delta R. So the bridge balance is upset. Now VAB, the voltage that is being measured, just I have shown here that assuming that the voltmeter has very high, extremely high input impedance, input resistance, by applying the potential divider rule, you get this expression for VAB. If it were null method of measurement, then we could have, the effect of RL would have been very small. But when we are considering the direct readout method of measurement, that means by measuring VAB, we want to have a measure of the strain. You just see in that inside the expression, RL is very much there. All right. Assuming that R1 is equal to R, this is the expression. Simplifying it, ignoring RL, suppose the situation is such that RL can be ignored. VAB becomes what is shown here. So VAB is not linearly related to, just 1 minute. VAB is not linearly related to delta R by R. So that is a demerit. For metal alloy gauges, you may consider the delta R by R because the gauge factor is low. Delta R by 2R is very small compared to 1. So VAB for practical purposes, it will be VI by 4, delta R by R. That means replacing delta R by R with gauge factor into epsilon, you find that VAB, it is proportional to epsilon approximately. That's a good approximation for metal alloy gauges. What will happen for semiconductor gauges? For semiconductor gauges, delta R by 2R cannot be ignored in comparison with 1. Therefore, this nonlinear relation will exist. There are two things for semiconductor gauges. The nonlinear relation between VAB and delta R by 2R. This is the nonlinearity introduced by the bridge circuit. It has nothing to do with the type of strain gauge. But for semiconductor gauges, additionally, this nonlinear relation will be there. Additionally, the relation between delta R by R and epsilon, it will also be nonlinear. So the situation is more complicated in case of semiconductor gauges. There are methods available which may be used to counteract the nonlinearity introduced by the bridge only. For semiconductor gauges, it's very difficult to have a linearize the relation between gauge factor and epsilon, delta R by R and epsilon. That relation is very difficult to, whatever is done, that has to be done in the manufacturing stage. Now, there are certain problems. This relation is nonlinear, that is one part of the story. Second part of the story is that when we are considering some measurement systems, here we have a resistive sensor. So here what do we want? We want that the resistance of that sensor should change only due to mechanical strain, not due to anything else. But you know that if the temperature changes, the resistance of the sensor, it will also change. So that is an additional source of error. And often what is not understood is that for strain gauges, this effect of temperature change on the resistance value, that is extremely important. Why? Because in case of semiconductor gauges, in case of the strain measurement, when you are measuring the strain of structures, the monitoring of the strain is done, say, over a complete day. Not only that, maybe for more than one day. Therefore, null method cannot be used. Direct readout method has to be used. Because rarely do you come across situation where by using null method, you have to measure the static strain. On the contrary, the strain is changing with time. That type of situation is more prevalent. I have given the expression, the example. So there, if the monitoring continues for a complete day or more, what will happen? The temperature will change considerably over this span. So that's why the temperature error, we say that the strain gauge is cross-sensitive to temperature. Why cross-sensitivity? It is sensitive to some parameter, some physical variable, which was not intended to cause any change in the resistance. That's why it's called cross-sensitivity. So what's the way out? The way out can be just to, I have just, this is, you know these things. I have introduced here two strain gauges, one on the top surface, another on the bottom surface. Some force is applied. So here two identical strain gauges, SG1 and SG2, they are applied on the top surface and the bottom surface. So one will be under tension, another will be under compression. So this is the Siemens 3-lead arrangement. That type of strain gauge circuit, bridge circuit, it is called hub bridge, because two arms are occupied by two active gauges. I am stressing this point, active gauges. That means both of whose resistances are changing due to mechanical strain. So RG1, the resistance of strain gauge 1, it will be R plus delta R into 1 plus alpha G into delta T. Alpha G and delta T, you understand what they stand for. The temperature coefficient of resistance is alpha G, and delta T is the change in temperature. So here, just see, VAB is expressed as shown there. Here also the lead resistances creep in. So if the lead resistances are considerable, they are going to affect the, measurement accuracy. Not only that, think about the situation that you are carrying out measurement over the entire day or for more than one day. So over that span of time, the resistance of the connecting leads, the cable cords, they will also change considerably. You cannot determine the change. You cannot monitor that change. But that is an infeasible method of calculating the resistance value of RL and then subtracting, etc. But if RL is not large, or if you are not concerned with highest accuracy of measurement, then if you ignore RL, you find that what appears here is R plus delta R in the numerator times 1 plus alpha G into delta T. In the denominator, there is 2R into 1 plus alpha G into delta T. So that temperature term cancel out in the numerator and denominator. So VAB becomes VI by 2 into gauge factor into epsilon. In the earlier case, the bridge sensitivity defined in this way, it was 1/4, you know that. Here, the bridge sensitivity is half. But in both the cases, we have ignored the effect of the connecting wire resistances. So if connecting wire resistances can be ignored, or if they are small, if they can be ignored, the temperature compensation is perfect. The temperature term cancels out in the numerator and denominator. What else has happened? The sensitivity has got doubled, the bridge sensitivity. Here it was 1/4, it's a dimensionless quantity. Here it is half. But in spite of your good wishes, you will not be able to place the strain gauges, one under tension and one under compression. That type of situation, the arrangement may not allow you. I have considered here a cantilever, but it's not that you will always measure the strain in a cantilever. There can be complicated mechanical structures whose strain is to be measured. So what's the way out there? For temperature compensation, what you can do, you can just place the second gauge not as an active gauge, but dummy gauge. What is meant by dummy gauge? In the right hand side figure, it's clearly shown. SG2 serves as the dummy gauge. Its axis is perpendicular to the direction of the principal strain. And because they are designed to have very low transverse sensitivity, we may say that the resistance of strain gauge 2, it doesn't change due to mechanical strain. All right. Only what changes is SG1. So here what will happen again, if you ignore the lead resistances, there will be perfect temperature compensation, but the increase in sensitivity that we had in case of two active gauges, one under tension, one under compensation, that increased sensitivity will not be there. And the nonlinearity also will come in. VAB and delta R by R. Here, the nonlinearity also was removed. All these were done assuming the lead resistances to have negligible value. So now consider the thing. In all these three cases we have considered, lead resistances crept into the bridge arms. All right. Now I am showing you one arrangement which consists of 4 gauges. 2 under tension, the upper 2, and these 2 are under compression. Now this Wheatstone bridge, these 4 gauges, they occupy the four arms of the Wheatstone bridge. All right. That means the Wheatstone bridge can be configured locally. You need not take connecting cable for connecting these gauges to constitute a Wheatstone bridge. The Wheatstone bridge is formed locally at site. But you require a connecting cable. Why? Because you have to supply this Wheatstone bridge from some voltage source at the control room. And the output signal, it has to be taken to some voltage measuring device or plotter. All right. Now these four gauges, what is ensured? The lead resistances, the connecting wire resistances, they don't get inserted into the bridge arms. They appear only in the supply branches and in the output branches. So if this source Vi has very low output resistance, there will be not some loading of Vi, no loading of this source will take place. All right. Similarly, if this voltmeter has very high input resistance, then there will be no conspicuous drop in these output leads. So here, when there is no strain, all the strain gauges, because they are identical, each will have a value of R into 1 plus alpha G into delta T. When there is strain, ignoring drops in supply branch leads, that can easily be done by designing the source properly. You can use a buffer also, all right, so as to eliminate the loading effect of the bridge circuit on the source. Therefore, what will happen to VAB, the voltage that is voltmeter is measuring? This will be the expression applying potential divider rule. RG1 divided by RG1 plus RG3 minus RG4 divided by RG2 plus RG4. Substituting RG1 with R plus delta times this temperature term, and RG4 also, same expression. RG1 plus RG3. All right. What is RG3? RG3 will be R minus delta R into 1 plus alpha G into delta T. All right. Similar will be the case for R minus delta R into 1 plus alpha G into delta T, that is for RG3 and RG4. For RG1 and RG2, the change in resistance is from R to R plus delta R. So by making those substitutions, you can simply see that the temperature terms cancel out and VAB becomes exactly proportional to mechanical strain. If you have a metal alloy gauge, there is no chance of the performance being affected by lead resistances. In the earlier analysis, we had to ignore the lead resistances, but here no such assumption is necessary. So the output voltage is directly proportional to epsilon, because in case of metal alloy gauges, what will happen? The gauge factor will remain constant. The sensitivity is now 1. Sensitivity for two active gauges, it was half. Sensitivity for a single gauge, it was 1/4. Now it is 1. All right. 4 times that for single active gauge. So sensitivity is increased. Lead resistances are, they don't affect the measurement. And there is perfect temperature compensation, which was not there in the earlier cases because of keeping in of the lead resistances. Now point out, we are assuming that all these gauges, they are identical. Therefore, when there is no mechanical strain, when they are not experiencing any mechanical strain, the output voltage VAB is 0. That will not happen because of manufacturing tolerance. Suppose all the gauges, they are specified, they have a specified nominal resistance of 350 ohms. But if you collect 4 gauges from that assortment, you will find that one gauge may have a resistance of 350.1 ohm, another gauge may have a resistance of 349.5 ohm, like that. That's why even when there is mechanical strain, because of the slight differences in all these 3 gauge resistances, the output voltage VAB will not be zero. The best way of, we want that under such a condition, the output voltage will be zero. So with that intention, we have introduced this network. So when the mechanical strain is zero, the wiper of this potentiometer RB1, that is varied. So potential of this point with respect to ground, that is either increased or decreased depending on the requirement. A null detector is connected here and this wiper position is adjusted until that indicates null. This is the condition when no mechanical strain is applied under such a condition. This is the network that we have introduced. It's only meant for removing the offset, making the output of the bridge zero when there is no mechanical strain. Similar such network has been used in your experiment. Now remember that this is a typical what is known as load cell. Load cell is used, load cell consists of an elastic member of steel, all right, supported at one end. And this is the pan on which the weights that you want to measure, they are applied, they are placed. Usually there are 4 gauges, 2 under tension as shown and 2 under compression. All right. So the sensitivity is the maximum possible. There is perfect temperature compensation, etc. You can form the Wheatstone bridge locally. But think about the situation. We are talking about placing 2 gauges under tension and 2 gauges under compression. Will it be possible? In any given situation, will it be possible? It may happen that you cannot do so. At most, you can place 1 under tension and 1 under compression. And there is no scope for placing other 2 strain gauges, 1 under tension and 1 under compression. It may happen. Then what will you do? So with that background, I am moving on to your experiment that will not take much time to cover. So I am just moving on to the experiment. Once you have, if you have understood it, not much. This is the arrangement, just see. There is a key here. There are 4 gauges. Strain gauge 1, strain gauge 2, strain gauge 3, strain gauge 4. All right. Now here, the arrangement is same as the load cell that we have considered. These load cells are used when you yourself stand on a digital weighing machine. This load cell is there. It's used in weighing bridge. All right. You have seen when passing through the highways, Dharmakata, those weighing bridges for trucks carrying commodities. There also this type of load cell is used, of course, to a larger extent. In the market, when you come across these digital weighing machines for measuring the weights of the commodities that you are purchasing, there also this weight cell is there. The load cell, sorry. In this case, the problem is that situation is such that you cannot place 2, all the 4 gauges, 2 under tension and 2 under compression. SG1 and SG4, these two strain gauges are active strain gauges. One is under compression, one is under tension. But remember the important advantage of using 4 gauges. All right. What was their advantage? You could form the Wheatstone bridge locally. So to keep that advantage, to make use of that advantage, 2 other gauges, SG2 and SG3, they are so mounted that they serve as dummy gauges. So what do you gain? The lead resistances do not creep into the bridge arms. They are there in the supply arms and in the output branch. All right. But they don't creep into the other bridge arms. That is one part of the story. As a consequence, what happens? You can have perfect temperature compensation. Although the sensitivity that you would have obtained by having 4 active gauges, 2 under tension, 2 under compression, that sensitivity is not achieved. Sensitivity there would have been 1 normalized sensitivity, now it is half. Same as 2 active gauges and 2 resistances. Same thing. All right. So this is the reason why 2 active gauges are used in conjunction with 2 dummy gauges. The setup was such that you could not mount 2 other gauges as active gauges. So what is done is that this দেখতে পাচ্ছ কি পুরোটা? প্রবলেম হচ্ছে কি জানো? Run 1. You have been asked to connect a null detector between A and B. A and B means that point and where is B? This point, black. This K is open. K is open. These resistances, these gauges have nominal resistance of 350 ohms, but they will vary. So what is the bridge configuration that we are considering here in run 1? SG1 and SG2, they occupy 2 adjacent arms of the bridge. The other 2 arms are R2 and R1. All right, the other 2 arms are R2 and R1. So 1 active gauge and 1 dummy gauge. Assuming nominal resistance of SG2 as RSG2 equal to 350 ohms, the value of SG1 is RSG1 prime equal to R1 at null. All right. So this gauge resistance is assumed as 350 ohms. Now with no weight applied on the pan, what do? You adjust R1 to get balance condition of this bridge. So বোঝার চেষ্টা করো ব্রিজটা কোনটা, SG1, SG2, R2, R3. Those 2 gauges are not in the bridge circuit. So R1 value that you get to achieve null, what will be the bridge balance equation? হ্যাঁ বলো। হ্যাঁ চলে এসো। So here between A and B you have connected the galvanometer. The value of R1 with which you have been able to get null condition, from that value you can get the nominal resistance of SG1. SG2 I am assuming it as 350 ohms. Although if I could measure it, it would have come out as something else. But we are not doing that just for the sake of experiment. Rather, when this complete bridge is balanced under no load condition, R2 is selected as 350 ohms. That is fixed. Therefore, if SG1 has a nominal resistance of 350 ohms, the value R1 should also be 350 ohms. But because SG1 will not have 350 ohms value, R1 will have some other value, maybe 350.1. So that value of R1 is obtained from run number 1. All right. Assuming nominal resistance of SG2 as 350 ohms, the actual nominal resistance of SG1 is R prime SG1 equal to R1 at null. Now what do? You apply known loads successively. 100 grams you apply. Bridge balance is disturbed, this bridge balance. You adjust R1 to restore the bridge balance. Then you apply 200 grams. Bridge balance is again upset. You adjust R1 to restore the bridge balance. Note the value of R1. So here you just apply known loads successively, and for each load adjust R1 to restore null. Note the changed value of R1, which is equal to the changed value of resistance RSG1 of SG1 under load. In each case, ascertain whether SG1 is under tension or compression. For each applied load, find delta R from the relation RSG1 plus minus delta R equal to R1. That obviously would be the case. If RSG1 is the nominal resistance of SG1, this term is 350 ohms, this term is 350 ohms, RSG1 plus minus delta R, that will be equal to value of R1 that with which you have been able to obtain null. All right. So there is a table here for run 1. Load in grams from 0. Just see here. When load in grams in 0, the value of R1 required to balance the bridge, that is 350.22 ohms. So that is actually the RSG1, the nominal value of the gauge resistance. When it is increased to 100, R1 increases. That means the value of resistance that you get, that increases, implying that resistance of SG1 also increases with applied load. Because it's a metal alloy gauge, therefore, because with the impressed load, the resistance value changes, so SG1 is under tension. Just 1 minute, I'm just coming. So, when you apply 100 grams, R1 changes to 350.28, the value of R1 required to achieve balance. Remember that R1, whatever value R1 is taking here, it is actually the value of the strain gauge SG1, because SG2 and R2 both have resistances of 350 ohms. All right. So in this way, you go on increasing the load and balance the bridge again and again, etc. Now from a load of 1000 grams, you gradually decrease. When you are increasing the load, increase it monotonically. Don't trace back. Otherwise, you will be in trouble. I mean, you will deviate from the monotonous nature. Because in this type of arrangement, hysteresis, mechanical hysteresis is an important aspect. After you reach 1000 ohms, 1000 grams, you progressively decrease 1000 grams. From 1000, you move on to 900. There, you restore the bridge balance. Just see, here it was 350.74, here it is 355.77. So all these values are value of R1 required to achieve bridge balance. So these are actually values of the resistance, the strain gauge SG1. So from this data, remember that you have ended your experiment when reaching zero load again. Just see that there is a difference between the two values of R1. You started from this value 350.22 under the assumption that load in grams is 0. Yeah, we have done that really. But now, while coming back, when you have removed the load completely, it's coming out slightly higher. So if you plot the strain versus load characteristic, there will be an increasing part and the decreasing part will come over that. How will you calculate delta R? Because you have to calculate delta R. Gauge factor is known, its value is 2. So mechanical strain is delta R by R divided by gauge factor. So what will be delta R? For zero load, delta R is 0, obviously. For increasing zero load, when it is 350.28, what is delta R? 350.28 minus RSG1, which is the nominal value of strain gauge SG1. So it is 350.28 minus 350.22. That means 0.06. Move on to 200 grams. R1 came out as 350.34. So delta R here will be 350.34 minus 350.22. That means 0.12 in this way. So all these delta R in reality, they are actually the values of change in resistance of SG1. Because change in resistance value R1 to attain the bridge balance is same as change in resistance value of SG1. So you get all these delta R values. Then for each such delta R values, you compute the strain using the expression delta R by R divided by gauge factor is mechanical strain. So you complete this table and you draw the two strain versus load plots. Strain versus load plots for increasing load and decreasing load. Now in run 2, instead of this null detector, you use a millivolt meter across A and B. Connect a millivolt meter. Now you will use direct readout method. Millivolt meter is used as a detector between points A and B. K2 is kept open. K2 is kept open means you are still working with the earlier bridge. Now what will happen here? Step 1, when load is 0, R1 is obtained as, for example, 350.4. All right. Because of some creep taking place inside the bonding between the backing plate and that metal object. Just see here, when load is 0, earlier you obtained 350.22. Now you are getting 350.40. That shouldn't have happened for a perfect system. And VAB, the value of VAB that you get, that will be treated as an offset. So this is, we consider it as 0. When load is 200 grams, the value of R1 required is 350.40 ohms. Therefore, when load is equal to 200 grams, what is R1 prime? R1 prime is 350.59. All right. Why it is 350.59? (200 grams you have impressed, so R1 value is 350.40. Why it is 350.59? Let me just check. Oh yes. When load is 200 grams, R1 equal to 350.4 and VAB is 0.58 millivolt, the unbalanced voltage. Now you adjust R1. Now you adjust R1 to obtain null. All right. With the load impressed, you obtain null. That is VAB equal to 0 millivolt. So you find out the sensitivity. S. You know the definition. All right. What will be S? You know this definition. I'll give the definition. You find out the sensitivity. VAB by VS. VAB by VS divided by that delta R by R, etc. What sensitivity do you expect here? What sensitivity value do you expect here? One active gauge, one dummy gauge. I just described you. What sensitivity value do we expect here? It's same as having a single gauge. So the sensitivity value that you will expect here is 1 by 4. Recall the expression for the sensitivity, VAB divided by the supply voltage divided by delta R by R. So what will be delta R here? 350.59 minus 350.4. That means 0.19. That is delta R. And R is 350.4. All right. VAB by VS, VAB is 0.58. And VS I will supply. VS is not, they have not written VS, it's around 6 volts. I'll supply that value. So once you get this sensitivity, you move on to run 3. Millivoltmeter is again used as a detector between points A and B. K2 is open. Same arrangement. Now we are going for millivoltmeter, direct readout method. Why did I go through these steps? Because by direct readout method, if you want to obtain the mechanical strain, then what will you do? You require the value of the sensitivity. Unless you do that, you cannot find out the. So that's why these readings were taken. Now come to this case. You impress load in grams, 0, VAB is 0. Increase it to 100, VAB is 0.08 millivolt. Then you move up to 1000 grams and then decrease it. All right. End it at 0 load. So from this VAB readings, you can find out the strain. How will you find out the strain? By using the sensitivity value. What is sensitivity value? VAB by VS divided by delta R by R. This value you have obtained. So from it you have to calculate the value of strain. You can easily do that. All right. From the values of the measured values of the VAB. Next, move on to run 4. Millivoltmeter is used as a detector between point B and R. K2 is kept closed. K2 is kept closed. This is closed and you connect the millivoltmeter between R and B. Now you have a bridge whose one arm is, this one is an active gauge with under tension, this one is a gauge, active gauge under compression. Other two are dummy gauges. Why have I asked you to close K2? Now these two resistances, rather I have kept that fixed, this one and that one. Now this resistance will be varied. What will be the resistance? What will be the role of this network now? It will act as that offset removing network. Do you understand? The offset removing network, it will act as that. So in this computer laptop Acha, here, run 4. So here, how will you get epsilon? In run 3, how did you get this epsilon value? Epsilon is VAB by VO divided by VS. VS value I will supply. That divided by S into gauge factor. Do you understand? Because S is VAB divided by VS divided by delta R by R. All right. And delta R by R divided by gauge factor is mechanical strain. So this is the expression for calculating epsilon in this case. Run 3. What sensitivity value will you use for run 4? You have changed the bridge configuration. How? You have closed it. Now you are using this bridge as the measurement circuit. So what will be the change in sensitivity value? Earlier you had one single active gauge and one dummy gauge. Now you are having two active gauges, one under tension and one under compression, and two other dummy gauges. Two other dummy gauges is same as two external resistances. So what will be the sensitivity value now? So what will be the sensitivity value now? আগের চেয়ে যদি S হয়ে থাকে এখন কত হবে সেন্সিটিভিটি? এতক্ষণ ধরে তো থিওরি আলোচনা করলাম এর আগে। দুটো অ্যাক্টিভ গেজ যদি হয় সেন্সিটিভিটির ভ্যালু কত হয়? হাফ। 1/4 ছিল এখন ডাবল হয়ে গেল। ওটা কিন্তু এক্স্যাক্টলি 1/4 বেরোবে না তোমাদের, সেটা খেয়াল রেখো। সেই জন্য সেন্সিটিভিটি ভ্যালু বার করতে বলা আছে। Now it will become double. So whatever sensitivity you had calculated here, this sensitivity, now it will become 2S. All right, 2S. VS এর ভ্যালুটা তোমাদের দেওয়া থাকবে। So epsilon becomes VBR minus VO. VO will be assumed as 0. So it will be VS, VAB, VBR by VS divided by 2S into gauge factor. Gauge factor is 2. So here again, in case of table 3, from these values, you may compute strain, considering sensitivity as 2S. All right. So there should be 3 sets of plots. one set for increasing load and decreasing load for that run 1, which you obtain from table 1. Second case, increasing and decreasing load, which you obtain from table 2. All right, strain versus load plot. Remember, y-axis is strain, x-axis is load in grams. And table 3, this is again strain versus load plot for increasing as well as decreasing load. So these plots, these data, remaining data will be given to you. These plots, you have to calculate these values, strain values, and give the plots in 3 separate graph papers. So what we are asked to do will be drawing of this circuit, all right, and then showing all these, filling up all these tables. You must show sample calculation, 1 for run 1, 1 for run 2. There should be complete sample calculation shown wherever required. For run 3, 1 sample calculation, and run 4, 1 sample calculation. So in this way, you have to submit the report. I'll send it to you in 2 or 3 days, I believe. You have to submit it after the vacation. I'll give a proper time. If anything is not clear to you, please ask me, please. কোন জায়গাটা অস্পষ্ট আছে? When you calculate S, this is the expression. This is the expression. এই V0 বারবারই লিখছি, এটার কারণ কি? V0 লিখছি এই কারণে, we are using here digital millivolt meters. So if you could actually perform the experiment, V0 will give some spurious value. That is due to pickup from environment. So that value has to be subtracted. That's why V0 is there. There is no other reason why this V0 should come in. All right. It should have been ideally VAB by VS, that divided by R1 prime minus R1 divided by RSG1. যে কোনো প্রশ্ন থাকলে আমাকে জিজ্ঞেস করো।
স্যার রিপোর্ট সাবমিটের ব্যাপারটা আরেকবার একটু বলুন।
আমি লক্ষ্মী পুজোর পরে একটা, মানে যখন ইউনিভার্সিটি খুলবে সেই সময় একটা প্রপার ডেট আমি দিতে কোনো অসুবিধা হবে না।
আচ্ছা,
ঠিক আছে। আর অন্য কথা কিছু বলো, এগুলো কি একদমই কিছু বুঝলে না নাকি? এটা যদি অস্পষ্টতা থাকে, থিওরি অন্তত যদি বুঝে থাকো তাহলে যথেষ্ট ভালো। চারটেই কেন অ্যাক্টিভ ইউজ করা গেল না বুঝেছো? মাউন্ট করার জায়গা নেই, চারটে অ্যাক্টিভ গেজ মাউন্ট করার জায়গা নেই ওই অ্যারেঞ্জমেন্টটায়। কিন্তু চারটে গেজের যে সুবিধে, যে লোকালি ব্রিজটা ফর্ম করা যায় যাতে লিড রেজিস্ট্যান্স গুলো ব্রিজ আর্মে ঢুকে না যায়, সেই সুবিধাটাকে কাজে লাগানোর জন্য চারটে স্ট্রেন গেজ ইউজ করা হয়েছে। ঠিক আছে। এখন তোমরা জিজ্ঞেস করবে না, সব পুজোর আনন্দে, বেশি আমার আনন্দ করো না, ভালো কাটাও পুজো, সাবধানে।
ওকে
So I am logging off.
ওকে স্যার।